I am so super excited to be doing this interview today on Primetime Local News. Greg Nicotero is joining us from Atlanta, Georgia. Greg has been involved for quite some time doing special effects in movies and TV shows. Greg, I know you're a busy man, so thank you so much for taking the time to talk to us today.
Oh, it's my pleasure. Thanks for having me.
And now, one of your latest projects is the Creep Show series, which is absolutely amazing. The visual effects are incredible. Is that what you're doing right now, is working on the second installation of that?
Yeah, we're about three-quarters of the way through shooting season two. I'm about to start prepping the finale for season two, and it's been a blast. I mean, we were supposed to start shooting March 16th, so we had prepped the first two episodes, and then we shut down. So as soon as it came time to get back to work again, everybody sort of jumped back in, and it's been a really great experience. Everybody's being safe, everyone's being cautious and healthy, and still having fun, which is why do it if you're not having a good time? So.
Well, and some of the projects you were involved in the past, obviously amazing special effects. Walking Dead was one that so many people know, and as soon as I mentioned this today, everybody was super excited. Tell me about your involvement on The Walking Dead and how much work goes into a lot of the effects with a show like that, where it's pretty much all about people that need special effects.
Well, my relationship with The Walking Dead began probably 2 years before the show was even produced, because I had worked with Frank Darabont on most of his films, and when they were shopping The Walking Dead around, the one question that a lot of the studios had was, well, how are you going to do the zombies? And Frank's response was, oh, well, I have this guy Greg Nicotero that I work with all the time, and he has a really good plan for like how to mass produce walkers and zombies, and maintain the visual aesthetic. I mean, for me, I grew up on Night of the Living Dead and Dawn of the Dead, so I kind of always joke around about the fact that zombies have been in my blood since I was a kid anyway. So we were brought on board to really sort of help Frank and Gail Ann Hurd convince a network that you could do something of this magnitude in terms of prosthetics and makeup effects on television, because it really has never been done before. It hadn't been done. Now you have American Horror Story, and also you had Game of Thrones, and there's a lot of shows that have a lot of prosthetics and a lot of creature effects and makeup effects. The Star Trek Discovery, but Walking Dead was kind of one of the first shows that really embraced creating all of these practical characters. So I've been involved with the show for a dozen years, and started directing in season two, and then became the producing director on the show. So I've directed about 30 episodes at least of The Walking Dead.
Now, going back to when you first started, that was the time when the real, for me anyways, the classic horrors were out. You had the Friday the 13th, Nightmare on Elm
Mhm.
Streets. Things have progressed so much in this effects field now. How do you find working now as compared to on some of the earlier projects that you started on?
Well, what's always interesting about it is it's it really depends on the filmmakers that you work with. For me, one of the fun things about it is a lot of people that are finding their own footing in the film industry were inspired by movies that I worked on. I mean, like a lot of people talk about Day of the Dead, a lot of people talk about Evil Dead 2. They were influenced and inspired by George Romero and Sam Raimi and John Carpenter and John Landis and Robert Rodriguez and Quentin Tarantino. And so when people will be like, "Wait a minute, you worked on Grindhouse? Oh, you did that movie? You did that movie?" So it's kind of fun for me to know that my career has allowed inspiration for up and coming filmmakers. And I would say a couple of years ago, between Alex Aja and Eli Roth and, Guillermo del Toro and a lot of these guys who came out of the genre, out of the genre world, and became, directors in their own part. They were all inspired by what we do. So, I think it's kind of exciting I think it's really exciting that that people are inspired by the stuff that I used to do and continue to do, actually.
Now, you have had the chance to work with Quentin Tarantino, as you said, on a number of his movies. What's that like? Because his movies are obviously, you just take it to the limit for blood, gore, whatever you need to do. That must have been kind of a dream for somebody who works in special effects.
Well, Quentin has a unique vision, unlike anyone else's. I mean, I've been on all of his movie sets with him, and I've designed effects for everything, from Reservoir Dogs all the way up to Once Upon a Time in Hollywood. And you know, a lot of times the way that Quentin works is, he loves the collaborative process of like, well, I'll give you an example. The car crash in Death Proof, and even in From Dusk Till Dawn, and a lot of Quentin's earlier movies, the script was not very specific about what was happening. Like in From Dusk Till Dawn, in Dusk Till Dawn, when the vampires showed up, it was like, and all hell breaks loose. And then with the Death Proof car crash scene, Quentin had sort of outlined roughly what he was thinking about, and then we would go off, and then we would uh, visualize my interpretation of some of the stuff that he imagined. And for him, being able to show him video tests of, the bodies being torn apart in the car crash, or even on Inglorious Bastards, like the scalpings and that kind of stuff. Quentin is really, he's really collaborative that way, and he's such a student. I mean, the guy's an encyclopedia of film knowledge, so he can talk about things in reference to films. When we're doing Inglorious Bastards, and he was like, "Yeah, we're gonna do the scalping, but I don't want to build the forehead up too high, like the helicopter zombie in Dawn of the Dead." I knew exactly what he was talking about, but there's a unique shorthand that you have with Quentin when you're dealing with movies. And I think for me, the biggest compliment is being able to sort of visualize things with Quentin, and then we get the set, and he kind of looks at it like, "Wow, this is even better than I had imagined." I mean, that's kind of what you want with any director.
Now, you've worked on both ends of the scale where you have the ultimate gore and then some, death scenes. I saw in an interview that you actually were involved in Scream and Scream 2. And I think was it the Drew Barrymore scene in the very first one, as well as the garage door scene that you were involved with?
The Scream movies, again, I mean, I feel like I've had a great opportunity to work with these visionary directors, and Wes Craven was one of them. The funny thing about Scream was, I remember when that script was going around Hollywood, it was called Scary Movie. And the fact that it was kind of a throwback, Wes really wanted it to be kind of overly gory, and that was kind of the fun tongue-in-cheek aspect of it. Was Kevin Williamson and Wes really did a great job of sort of paying homage to those movies, and also kind of sending them up a little bit by playing against the tropes. So I know we did a lot. I think the first Scream was the most gory of all of them. I think by Scream 3, we ended up doing just a couple blood gags here and there. But I know between the Drew Barrymore death and the Rose McGowan death, and the stuff that we did in the first movie, we were pretty, Wes kept us pretty busy.
Now, I did see on your Instagram post that you have a picture of yourself with the iconic Freddy Krueger glove. Do you save everything or a lot of things from your movies? Do you have still a lot of the things you made from the beginning on, or have they been kind of packed away and tossed aside as you go through your career?
Well, I mean, I'm a fan, so I love collecting props and keeping props. I mean, usually this shelving unit is covered with stuff, but we're shifting offices and moving stuff around, so I've been packing my car every day with severed heads and werewolves and Freddy Krueger gloves and things like that. But I don't know. I mean, I think it just goes to that sort of ultimate fan experience where whether you jump in an airplane and you fly to Martha's Vineyard because you want to see where they filmed Jaws, or you want to, you go to the Monroeville Mall outside of Pittsburgh where they shot Dawn of the Dead. There's something unique about horror film fans, and they really savor and relish in the idea that you can connect to a specific place. You know, like every time I know anybody that goes to Washington D.C., they go to Georgetown and they'll stand at the bottom of the steps from The Exorcist, and it just makes those films real. And it's a unique scenario. And I think collecting movie props and being able to celebrate not only the horror genre but the artists that contributed to those movies. I mean, that's a really powerful thing, you know, celebrating the makeup effects artists, celebrating the directors, celebrating the designers. You know, we had a really unique opportunity last year because the Motion Picture Academy, which I believe is opening sometime early next year, rescued one of the last castings of the shark from Jaws that was on display at Universal from 1975 to 1990. So when Jaws came out, the Universal executives were like, "Oh my God, we have the biggest movie in the world, and we don't have anything on our back lot to really sort of celebrate the movie." So they took the molds from the shark and they made a fiberglass copy and they hung it at Universal for years and years and years. And then it went to a junkyard in Sun Valley and the junkyard closed. So it got donated to the museum. So I got hired to sort of supervise the restoration and take this, you know, 40-year-old, 45-year-old casting and recreate it and sort of bring it back to what it looked like when they would have filmed the movie. And I think one of the greatest moments was I invited Joe Alves and Roy Arbogast, special effects artist, and Jeffrey Kramer, who was one of the actors in the movie, and they came up to my studio and they saw the shark when we had finished the work on it. And I had castings of the original teeth that we put into it, and we repainted it. And it really, for me, this museum is such a tribute to the craftspeople. You know, you don't hear enough about the people whose blood, sweat, and tears created these amazing movies. So to be standing next to the two guys who were responsible for designing and building the shark and looking at their faces, I felt like I had been transported into a time machine to 1974 and was watching them look at the shark. Um, it was a great moment for me because I realized not only am I giving these artists who inspired me a fitting tribute, but once the shark is hanging in the museum, every single person that goes to that museum is going to look at that shark and go, how the hell did anybody ever think that they could make that movie and basically put a Mack truck in the water and pull it through the water and have like one of the biggest films in motion picture history? So um, going back to your question about collecting props and things, it ties you to it and it gives you a special connection. And, you know, I think something that I'm going to be proud of till the day I die is the fact that I now helped perpetuate the legacy of a movie that I absolutely loved and still love.
Well, Greg, horror is my favorite genre, so this has been an honor to speak with you today. Just one more thing before we go. Do you have a rough idea as to when we can expect to see the second season of Creepshow released?
I don't know yet. I know we have an animated episode that we did, you know, when we were all sort of hunkered down. I think in July we came up with this idea of like, well, wait a second, we should take two stories that we wanted to shoot for Creepshow and do a animated version. So I believe it airs on Shudder at the end of the month, and it's a Stephen King story called Survivor Type, and a Joe Hill story called Twittering from the Circus of the Dead. So I believe it's the first time that we ever have Stephen King and Joe Hill sort of paired together on a project like this. And I love Steve's stuff. I've loved it since I was a kid, and Joe Hill is just genuinely a true talent. So I feel really, really honored that I get to work with these two masters of horror and suspense. So we have like a kind of a fun sort of Halloween animated Creepshow episode that'll be out very, very soon.
All right, Greg. Well, thank you so much again for speaking with us. I could, talk to you and ask questions about your career for hours, but I really do appreciate you speaking with us today. And we're looking forward to seeing the next episode of Creep Show and whatever you're going to be working on in the future. So once again, thanks for joining us.
Thank you very much. It was my pleasure. We'll do it again.